Welcome to Sustain This, a podcast where we discuss mindful consumption, personal style, and the quest for living a more intentional life. I'm ALYSSA, a sustainable stylist.
And I'm CHRISTINA, a shopaholic turned minimalist-ish.
And I'm SIGNE, a color consultant and slow fashion style coach.
Together, we will unpack the nuances of what it really means to be a conscious consumer and find more joy in what we have right now. So grab your tea, your coffee, or whatever floats your boat and join us in the conversation. Let's go. Yay. Yay. Okay, welcome back. Hello. Today, we're talking about what to ask yourself before you make a purchase. We're going to get into things that we ask before we buy. I think the biggest piece about asking yourself questions before you make a purchase is just to give yourself some space. And you know, we love talking about ways to reduce our consumption, ways to shop more mindfully on this podcast, and how to make purchases, clothing purchases that we actually end up wearing and loving. And I think giving ourselves that pause and asking ourselves questions before we make a purchase is a huge and very crucial part in making some solid purchasing decisions. So what are some of the questions, or how long? Actually, I'm curious. Have you always asked yourselves questions before you buy, or like when did you both start doing this? Tell me the journey.
Yeah.
No,
me neither. Yeah. I think I definitely agree, like pausing and just like asking yourself how you're feeling right now is probably like the most important question to ask. Like, because a lot of people are, and I would do that too in the past, I would use shopping as a way to, you know, not have to think about negative emotions or like, swap the situation around and make it feel more lighthearted and forget about uneasy things, like any uneasy things that life was like throwing at me.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I think for me, I never really asked myself any like shopping questions other than, do I have money to buy it? Like, then I'll do it.
I didn't even ask that. Mine was, should I go shopping today?
Yeah. I think like until 2000, I don't know. When did 2014-ish, I think. That was around the time I got into slow fashion. And so yeah, but not always.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. CHRISTINA, when was it that you started asking yourself questions?
2018, my first no buy, when I sort of committed to getting out of debt, that's when all of that really kicked off. So in 2018, if you don't know, I was about like $85,000 in student loan debt out of a total of $120,000. I had a full-blown like shopping addiction, compulsive shopping habit. And and I just felt really stuck financially. I felt really behind in life. And you could talk about like, well, how as messed up is this system that you even ended up in $120K of student debt to begin with? But like, I was in it, I felt stuck, and I was the one that had to get myself out of that. And a lot of my money was going to the wrong places. And I was shopping my feelings away. So that's when I, at that time I committed to getting out of debt. I went on my very first no buy. And I had to really unpack my relationship with shopping because the majority of my disposable income, if not all of it, was going towards shopping. So I really had to start from, really unpack all that and start from zero and figure out why do I shop? Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel so gross after shopping? Why am I not using any of the things that I bought? What do I have to show for it at the end of the day? Yeah, I mean, when I did that, it really it changed the course of my life because my relationship with shopping is so much better. I feel like it's so much more healthy. I've really sort of addressed a lot of like all or none mentality that I had with it too. So, so starting to ask myself questions before I bought something. And really, essentially, my ultimate question is why? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it changed the course of my life, I'd say.
Mm. Yeah. I actually have like a free shopping flowchart, which I think we can link it
Yeah.
in the show notes. Um, and it's actually like it's not something I religiously follow. Like it's shopping questions, like just examples, but it always starts with how am I feeling right now, and then you can kind of follow the arrows. If you're feeling sad, emotional, stress, it goes straight down to don't buy it.
Yes.
To pause. And if it's okay, I'm feeling on top of things, I'm feeling balanced, then it will go down to do I already have something similar? And then you can say yes or no, and then there are like additional questions, like for example, can I style it with at least 3 items I already have? Will it become effortless for me to style this item? Does it suit my lifestyle? And something else I think is really worth asking yourself too is how will you feel about this item when it starts looking worn? Like picture that item in the wash bin. Like how do you feel about it when it's dirty? Or if it's a sweater, if it starts pilling, like how will you feel
Great.
about it then? Will you still love it? Because I think we're really obsessed with newness. And we have this, especially like I always picture like a pair of sneakers, like a fresh pair of white sneakers. They won't stay that way forever. But does that mean that you need to replace them? Like when is it okay to replace an item? Like I feel like that's an interesting part of the discussion too.
Yeah.
When is something categorized worn out? And like compared to what?
Yeah. Because I find when I had a lot more clothes than I do today, even though I still do have a lot of clothes, that's like my favorite thing. But I had so many clothes that I like couldn't wear anything out, even my fast fashion. So it's like how much use was I really getting out of this stuff? I just I don't know. That's not really related to anything, but I just thought that was interesting. It's just like I had so much that I couldn't like nothing was worn out because it wasn't getting used.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like sometimes because we're so obsessed with newness, it becomes unrealistic. Like nothing will stay new forever. So I feel like it's also a way to practice that whole mindset of things. It's okay when things start looking a little bit worn out. It's like, can I look at it as something that makes the piece a little bit charming? That okay, my sneakers are not perfect anymore, but it's okay because it's like
love a grungy pair of white Converse.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think it's interesting too because I feel like asking that question in particular, which I never really thought about, it forces you to consider if the piece is worth buying in the first place. Because if it's like a crappy, like it makes you think about what is this made of? Is this collar going to warp? Is this going to pill and fall apart? And I just think of my partner, Jeff. He just bought, like I'd say a very high end, expensive t-shirt, but that t-shirt is going to last. Like it was an investment piece, and he's going to wear it every single day. And it's going to give him some great cost per wear compared to buying like 10 of the same fast fashion t-shirt for the same, the same price. Like those 10 t-shirts are going to wear out faster than this one with the same amount of wear. So I think it's just it's a good way to filter out a purchase even to begin with.
Yeah, true. Yeah. And also like to flip it around. Some pieces are so delicate that you can't, like the way you would need to handle them if you buy them. Like, are you going to do that? Are you really gonna like hand wash those two like pieces of knitwear every time you want to wash them? Or is it like unrealistic for you?
Yeah. What's the
maintenance?
How much maintenance does this clothing even require? Like, do I have to pay money at the dry cleaner? Do I have to take it to a tailor to make it fit perfectly? So what's the investment on top of this initial investment that I'm making that I need for afterwards? Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to think about sort of the not the end of life of the garment at the beginning, but thinking about the longevity of it for sure.
Yeah, and you also mean like if let's say you're wanting to like get rid of it at some point, then would you be able to sell it or yeah.
I think it also
Alyssa, do you have any? Oh,
No,
sorry.
go ahead. No, go
do
ahead.
you have any specific questions you ask yourself before you buy something, and how religiously do you follow it? Is it more like
That's a great question. I usually only run through them when I am struggling on a purchase, like if I'm questioning a purchase. So they're like the final gate, I guess, or like the final, because usually I've gotten better at just knowing whether something is a full-on yes, even if I've also come to like be okay with like a new purchase, even if it's like, do I need this? No. Would I answer a lot of those questions in the negative? Yes, but I love it. I'm going to buy it because I know I'm going to wear it for a lot. Like sometimes there's just certain things that I know will be a forever piece. So I just bypass the questions altogether.
Yeah, and like that's where it's important to allow yourself to buy something guilt-free, right? Like that sounds like guilt-free spending to me, and I like it.
Well, thank you. And then so usually they'll come into question. You know what? I find the more they come into question if a brand is, I use them for when a brand is offering me a piece. Like that's when I'll run through like where's what is the origin? Does it follow my values, which are usually like secondhand, good quality construction, and a really solid aesthetic? Always like, can I see myself wearing it in 5 to 10 years kind of question, which I know isn't an easy one to answer because you never know where you're going to be or what you're going to look like in 5 to 10 years. So but that's where the construction and the ethics of the garment, that's where I start to bring those into question, like those more technical things. But yeah, I rarely use them now when I shop, because I shop so rarely now for myself, and usually if I do see something I want, it's so rare that I'm so picky. It's so rare that I see something I like. If I like it, I know it's coming into my, like I know it's gonna come into my closet. And usually if I'm questioning, that's normally like a sign that I shouldn't get it anyway. So the questions come into play with taking on new clothes from a brand, I think, which is still helpful because it's still stuff coming into your closet. I might change my answer to that question later on.
Right.
I'm trying to think of the last time I made purchases, and no, like, you know what? Like they just felt so good.
Yeah. Maybe you shop more for your 3 words than you ask yourself like questions.
Yeah, like I used to ask myself those questions at the beginning of my whole, like back in like 2015, 2016, when I really started into the whole, because that's when I had changed jobs. So I also, a question that I used to ask myself a lot, because we moved from a 1,200 square foot townhome to like a tiny condo, and my job, like I quit finance, so my income was cut in half. So those were the questions where it was like, okay, if I bring this piece in, what am I letting go of? And like, if I bring this piece in, how will it maximize everything else in my closet? Like those questions, that's when I was really asking those questions, because I had no choice. So it's just changed, I guess, but I do find them so helpful, even if it's just to give yourself pause. Just to give yourself pause before you make a purchase. Yeah. I'm trying to think.
I mean, that's a question to ask. Can I wait?
Ooh, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
And I feel like the answer to that is
always
yes. Like, yes.
Yeah, true.
I guess like the other thing that comes down to, because I find I struggle with this too, because we can be as pragmatic about these questions as we want, but there is an emotional aspect to shopping that I think probably is the more powerful aspect, because I've answered, I might go down your flowchart and answer all those questions to no, but there's still something in me that says yes. And whether that be anxiety, or I need a sense of control, or self-sabotage, or whatever it is that you're dealing with, like something that's still difficult is like, how do you overcome that emotional aspect? And I think one of the things that's really helped me is just like, yeah, waiting, because waiting gives you space to forget about it. It gives you space to feel whatever feeling you're trying to avoid, to process that,
Yeah.
to sit with that boredom. Because I think a lot of us are not comfortable with being bored and doing nothing. As much as we say we're doing nothing, we're probably really doing something, whether it be scrolling or watching TV or doing something to distract ourselves. So, um, yeah, I think it's important to keep in mind the emotional side of it.
Yeah.
And it's in the
Definitely.
sense, like, whether it be an emotional feeling or whether it be a negative emotion or something positive. Is this like a visceral hell yes? Is this something that I am excited to spend the money on, that I'm happy to spend the money on, that I'm happy to buy, and that is something that makes me feel good? It's part of my rich life that I want to live, that I want to bring in. This is how I'm like spending my money in a way that I want. So, yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah. It's funny because I had, and I think we've talked about this before, I had like a vision of not buying more than, I think it was 10 pieces of clothing this
Mm.
year. And like, again, it's always secondhand first for me. So but I've kind of exceeded that now. And it's funny when I look back at the year as a whole, it's been a really, really great year. But it's also been a really weird year, like emotionally, like a lot of things going on in the world and like, and I'm not saying that's a direct like me exceeding my vision of not buying more than 10 pieces is because of that, but I think it definitely has, like, now that I'm looking back, I do think it has some sort of a connection. Like, it's, I feel like this year I've actually used shopping more than I'd probably want to admit, as for
100%.
like a coping mechanism with everything that's been going on, like both
Of
like in
course. I
personal
think a
life but
lot of
also
us do
with the
that.
100%.
what's all of the events of the world.
100%.
Yep.
It's true. You know what? That's such a good point. Like, for the first time in a long time, I've actually felt the pull of like, I just want to treat myself. Like, and a coffee
Yeah,
won't
yeah,
be good enough. A jar of Nutella will
yeah,
not be
no,
good enough. Like,
Oh,
yeah.
Nutella.
you know, like
Yeah,
it
I feel that way about
won't.
Christmas at the moment. I feel like it's so ridiculous, but it's like I'm buying a lot of like Christmas decor, and it's so ridiculous because we have so much, but it's like, okay, it's like a way of escaping
Mhm.
all of
100%.
the
So it's very,
madness.
and I think this is important to acknowledge and to
Yeah.
like, I feel like with these questions and the flow charts and everything, I feel like what it's really doing is leading us in the answer to when to say no. But really, I think the more important question is, when do you say yes? And when do you do
Mm,
that guilt free?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think the more virtuous answer is always to say no to consumption, to say no to this, and to rationalize why not. But
yeah,
I feel like life is not like that, and it can be so gray. So when is it, yeah, when is it okay to say okay to yourself
Yeah.
when it comes to to shopping?
yeah,
Yeah. That's why I really like Sina, your question of like, how am I feeling right now? And then it's like, shitty, not so great, or great.
yeah,
But I also think
yeah.
like, I think a big part of it, to Christina's point, is like, maybe you do buy something because you're having a shitty day, and that's okay. Like,
Mm,
well, maybe it's not. I don't know. It is confusing, but I think, as if you acknowledge that that's why you're buying, I don't know. No, that still doesn't make it right. Sorry, no, scratch that. It doesn't make it right. But I think being aware of why we're buying something. So actually, maybe in your flow chart, I like how we were saying like, wait, can I wait? Like,
mm,
maybe instead of a hard no, I would be like,
yeah,
let
can
me
I
just
wait?
wait.
True. Yeah,
Maybe I just shouldn't make the purchase now. Maybe it's just like a not now thing. I don't
yeah,
Not
know.
now.
I don't know. That's
Mhm.
yeah,
because I think, yeah, like, to both of your points, I think acknowledging the feelings behind why we shop is so important, because you can do so much self-discovery. And to Sina's point, like you've mentioned this before, like it's style is identity work. So maybe you get to uncover yourself, something about yourself a bit more in taking that no and being like, no, not now. I'm going to pause and see why I'm feeling this way. Da, 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 da. I don't know.
And I just think also, like, I don't think the key, at least what I talk about in my content, the goal is to never stop shopping altogether forever,
100%.
right? It's how do you develop a better relationship with it? How do you stop judging yourself and feeling this catastrophic remorse all the time? How do you stop using it as a coping mechanism? And how do you build a relationship with it that feels joyous the way it's supposed to?
And healthy.
And healthy. And the other thing is, like, a lot of these questions, they apply to when you're buying new, but we can also apply it to when we're thrifting and when things are not as expensive. And like there's ways to feel really good about your purchases. And I think if you're listening to this podcast, I mean, like, a lot of us, we love fashion, we love shopping. That's kind of part of it. And I think it's okay to admit that, but it's more like, when is it something that's toxic versus
when is it a crutch?
Abundant and fun.
Yeah. I think too, kind of like what we were talking about before, is the guilt-free. Like, do you guys ever give yourself like license? Like, I know when we talk about a list, or like I usually did, like if I'm going to a vintage market in another country, then it's like, you're free.
Go for it.
You're free. You know, like you
course.
give yourself you give yourself license in certain situations to do certain things and have a bit of fun within your financial limits always, so that you're being responsible. And not go absolutely crazy. But do you both do that? Do you have like wild cards situations? Kind of.
Yeah, I have like I'd say it's like there's like a guilt-free spending category in my budget. And I feel like that's made, so whether that be restaurants, clothing, whatever it is, it's a predetermined amount to give yourself leeway with that. Now, it doesn't give me license to just go and buy everything I want and like load up my wardrobe, because there's physical constraints and clutter constraints and limitations on that kind of set that boundary. So there's other things at play. It's what stresses you out versus what makes you feel great and excited. So it's always kind of playing around that balance. But I think having that guilt-free money category just gives me the freedom I can spend it all on coffee if I want, or I can spend it on clothes. And it's just whatever. It reduces the rigidity and the amount of pre-planning, and it gives you sort of license to be a little spontaneous with how that money is spent. So whether it be on a piece of clothing or something else, it's just like you can have some fun with it, which your money can be used as a tool to do that.
And you know what's funny is, like, I notice that when I do give myself the freedom, I don't go nuts. It's almost like I'm even more careful, because it's like, ooh, this is a special moment. I want this to be special. And so I'm even like more discerning. Like, so it's kind of nice. And we spoke about this in the low buy episode. Like, I find when I have such a hard, like, no, you cannot, then I focus on the no, I cannot. And then I get upset, and then I'm,
and then you want to rebel against yourself, and you're like, nah.
So I
like,
find,
screw it, I'm gonna break this.
So this way it gives you, it almost empowers you a little bit to be like, ooh, no, I get to be choosy now. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. It's all these mind games.
Yeah. I'm kind of inspired to do like a wild card thing, like give myself or allow myself like a wild card, or like to be spontaneous, because I feel like I'm not that spontaneous when I shop. Like, usually it's like, okay, well, it's because like it for example, jeans, like I've struggled so much with jeans like after pregnancy. I feel like I'm really repeating myself on that one, but it's been such a struggle for me.
Jeans are a struggle.
Yeah, and they really are, and it's been like so hard to find like some nice fits and stuff afterwards. And now that I feel like I've been wanting to like replace like different jeans within my wardrobe. So yeah, maybe when I'm noticing my body is changing, or I have like new requirements, or it's not feeling comfortable anymore, that's perhaps where I'm the most spontaneous, I think. Or like yeah, but yeah, I feel like other than that, I'm not really practicing being spontaneous, but I definitely like find it inspiring, like to what both of you said about like giving yourself, like allowing yourself to do that every once in a while without like feeling guilty about it.
Yeah, because I don't think being spontaneous necessarily equates to being impulsive directly. Because I find like for me, whenever I'm acting on impulse, I feel it kind of has like a negative connotation to it. In the sense of like if I'm being impulsive, it means I'm either like, oh, I'm so frustrated that I'm just like, oh, fuck it, let's just do this. So I feel like because spontaneity to me sounds fun and carefree, and I feel like that's the difference.
Yeah.
Whereas like impulse to me is almost like a reaction in a way to cope versus being spontaneous. Yeah, I'm just repeating
it's
myself
like
now.
Embracing.
But
No, it's okay. I repeat myself.
Yeah, embracing the moment. And
yeah.
Yeah. And it's almost more intentional, right? Like I know you can't be intentional about embracing a moment and being spontaneous, but in a way you kind of can. I like how you were saying that, Christina, like it's less reactive and more proactive, which I think gives us as consumers a bit more power, which is nice.
Yeah.
Do you, I guess for me, the reason why I like these questions and why I think I think a lot of us spoke about them probably on each our own platforms years ago now, was because I think they go deeper beyond the do I need this? I think for a while when this conversation around slow fashion and conscious consumption, like back when it was in its like genesis, a lot of advice would be like, ask yourself if you really need it. And it's like, oh, please, I can justify that 1,000 ways. Okay. You want to hear how bad my day was, how much I deserve a treat, all the things. So I think if you find yourself asking yourself, okay, do I need this? And you're still impulse purchasing or making purchases that you regret, then perhaps these are a really good tool for you to just go beyond the do I need this question.
Yeah.
It's funny because I was just like, but the do I need this is like, I would always find a way to say that I didn't.
Ooh.
But I think as you kind of talk about like how you feel constrained in a low buy, so you feel the pressure to rebel, I feel like I would do that because I was probably being unnecessarily rigid on myself and like privileged enough to be able to, not be, in terms of like having them, feeling like I had the money to spend and that kind of stuff. But I would always find a reason to say no. And I feel like I would still buy anyway and then feel bad. And it would turn into all that spiral because I was being too rigid on myself. Like it's important to know when to say yes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Sina, you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say like a lot of people like the purchasing questions, like they become interesting because you are probably looking to become a more mindful consumer. And we've talked about this before, that the most sustainable thing, like if we're talking sustainable fashion, the most sustainable thing you could do is to wear your wardrobe and wear what you have. So I think something else that can be really helpful is because a lot of people and a lot of clients I meet will have like standalone pieces in their wardrobe where it's like, yeah, I bought this piece because I really liked it and I with all the best intentions, but I don't know how to style it, or it just doesn't fit my wardrobe. Like it's not mergeable with what I have or what I already like wearing. So I feel like for me, like when I first got started, the most helpful way to approach it was to ask myself, like, can I wear it? Like, how am I going to wear this with what I already have? I feel like that was another really easy way to especially in terms of sustain, if that is what your concern is, or you're looking to become a more sustainable consumer, then that could also be a great place to start. Like to also, if you're practicing like styling in general, I feel like it all kind of connects. It's like picturing how you can wear this with what you already have.
That makes me think of, again, like kind of bringing it back to elements of style. And I mentioned this in one of our very first episodes, I think, was a question that I got conditioned to ask myself, like ever since I was super little, was, do I have something, and you had this question on your list, Sina, I think, like, do I have something at home that will already do the same job? And I think that's even going a little bit like, it's not necessarily, do I have this piece at home already? Because you could say, yes, I already do have this piece at home, but this one's a little bit different, or this one, I think it's like,
the but.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think instead it's like, wait, but does this piece serve a different, like, do I already have something that gives, like, that serves the same purpose? Do you know what I mean? So it's like, will it allow me to go to work, do the thing? I don't know. So it's almost like, again, like distilling your clothing down into tools versus the garment. It's good.
Yeah, because I think that is a great question to ask, actually, thinking of it, because I found, for example, I tend to buy very similar pieces, like slightly different. And I found over time that really started to become I was just buying more of the same. Like it was a white t-shirt, but it was like slightly different cut. But it's like, it's a white t-shirt. So it kind of it started to really eliminate the variety in my wardrobe in terms of things like texture and depth and color and things that I'm really leaning into now to feel to feel more interesting in the style uniform that I always wear. So, if the item is that, so I think thinking about an item as a tool in the sense of like, is this piece something that's going to elevate a casual outfit? Is this something that's going to dial it down and make it feel more chill? Like, what role is this playing in my wardrobe? And if I already have something that's doing that, then I don't think I need to buy it, because then it's just becoming more of the same. And that's ultimately clutter, because you probably reach for the other or something different.
Yeah.
To your point as well, with not having, like, you can only buy so much. Like, yeah, it might be a perfect fit for your wardrobe, but if you already have more than enough, it's like you're never going to be able to wear all of that. Yeah.
Harvard Business Review actually did an article on analysis paralysis and how it really cripples the consumer in making a decision. So when you do have so much stuff, you do get overwhelmed and you end up either wearing the same thing or just getting frustrated and buying more. So there really is power in being so discerning with your closet and taking less in. And it's always hard to see when you're in the thick of it and you're in front of a really beautiful piece. It's always hard to think the long term, but so okay.
And I think it's like, I was just going to say, it's like defining, what does less even mean to you, right? Like,
100%.
So it's relative, and I think it's important to focus on being that, 1%, 10% better every time you come across that situation, rather than being all or none, because I think it's very easy to just immediately go straight to, well, less is none, less is zero. And I just don't think that's realistic for most of us.
Yeah.
Hard to stick to.
Really good point.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
True.
This was great. I learned a lot today.
Yeah, me too.
A lot. And I think I just wanted to like sort of bring it back before we close out, that I didn't say this because we started talking about some other really great things, but I thought, Christina, when you told your story about sort of not blaming capitalism and marketing, and you took accountability for your own actions, I thought, and like by introducing these questions and changing your buying behavior, I thought that was really interesting, because while I don't think the consumer is solely responsible for like overconsumption and to be responsible for being the only people who practice slow fashion, but I do think taking that accountability is a way to empower ourselves and bring the power back a little bit in terms of our shopping habits. So I just,
yeah, and living your own values
Yes.
too, right? Instead of
yeah.
So completely agree.
I think it's there's definitely a lot of things working against us and a lot of pressure, but I feel ultimately we have choice and autonomy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
Yay.
That was
Yay
great.
us. Thank you so much, everyone. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. We can't wait to catch you in the next one. Leave us a comment if you've got questions or thoughts about your questions, or if there's a question that you ask. It's always fun to share and learn from each other. Give today's video a thumbs up, or if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, wherever, thank you so much for listening. And we'll be back in another episode. Ciao.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining in our conversation this week. If you're enjoying the show, we'd love it if you subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple and leave us a rating and review. It's one of the best ways to support the Sustain This podcast at zero cost to you.
we're also a community-led podcast, so if you have any questions for us, topic requests, or even guests you want to hear from, please send us a DM on Instagram at sustainthis_podcast. We read all of our comments and look forward to hearing from you.
We hope you join us again next Tuesday, where we'll talk about so much more than clothes.